So we could team up and we could do info meetings, phishing scams, cybersecurity.
That would be good.
Do it somewhere like at.
Right on the last minute,
How are you feeling, Patty? Much better, like a new person.
Suggest that they
With
don't
just a
allow
little
last
annoying
minute
cough.
hit pieces without allowing.
Much improved. You sound great.
A piece like that
It
that
was
could
another week from hell last week.
potentially slanderous
Illness.
comes in at the last
Addison.
minute.
My husband caught it.
Last man standing.
At the same time, otherwise it's.
I don't know if they periodically alerts out, so maybe reading them before it happens.
No, I'm sure he walked it in.
Get a newsletter once
What brought it earlier, so I don't want to.
But I did not say that.
file those together. Talk about each one, but seriously,
IRS.
the IRS is the, yeah, that's
people
the,
show.
Very well. How are you?
up until last year, the IRS never called me.
I know.
Something like that in Tuesday's paper.
Oh, did they?
Most I could have got something.
Up until last year.
I don't know if we switched
Okay.
chairs, but mine is usually wonky, and I feel very centered today. So sorry.
Let me call the meeting to a point of order and convene the committee of the whole, April 10th, and ask for a roll call, please.
Jacobson, Finucane,
Here.
Marquardt,
Here.
Snow,
Here.
Noriko,
Here.
Baker, Favor,
Here.
Ray.
Here.
6 present.
Thank you. We do have a quorum present. Alderman Baker indicated to me earlier today that he isn't expecting to return in time for our meeting this evening. I do expect Dave Jacobson to join us in progress. Moving to our first consideration this evening, a recent history of DeKalb growth trends. I'll turn to Joellen Charlton, our Community Development Director.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This evening, Jason and I are going to be tag teaming a little bit and presenting some information to you all about growth in the community. You don't have to go very far when you're talking about the community in the 2000 time period, between 2000 and 2009, to understand that there was some pretty hard times that the community went through during that time period in terms of new construction really kind of continued a constant decline during that time. I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking to you about those trends and going through the development that contributed to those trends at that point and then where we are coming to today. And then Jason is also here to talk a little bit more about the impact of that construction on both assessed values for total assessed value and for new construction. And also give a little bit of information about trends in residential development that's been happening, and we continue to get data. One of the things both Jason and I spend a lot of time on is evaluating data. We have quite a bit of data in the community, and we have been taking a look at it to understand the trends that are happening. One of the reasons that we wanted to take a look at this data is to understand what was happening with construction today as compared to 10 years ago. It's not uncommon for us to hear from people that they believe we're still in that situation that we were in 10 years ago, that development hasn't been happening in the community. And what the data shows that we're going to present you tonight shows just the opposite. In fact, that over the last few years, we have been steadily increasing in the amount of development happening in the community. The report shows a couple of tables that I want to share with everyone. This is showing the construction trends happening between 2006 and 2011. So in 2006, total construction was about $43.4 million, and that was the begin of the downturn for new construction. There's a small blip, an increase in the year 2010, and that small increase, or that large increase, was from one project that came into the community at that point from 3M. And if we hadn't had that one project, we would have had a very steady trend line down to 2011, where construction kind of bottomed out at $5.9 million. Moving on to some of the trends on how that affects the assessed values in the community, construction values for assessments greater than $100,000. We did take a look at the detailed construction activities that happen, and again, you can see in 2010 we had a slight increase over 2009, but then 2011 everything really kind of bottomed out. However, after that time frame, from 2011 till 2016, we have seen that steady increase that the graph shows, with 2016 being the last bar on the graph represented. Again, some of the projects that happened during those time periods were from single or pretty, important projects that weren't great in numbers, but nonetheless were great in their impact on the community. In 2016, which is the last bar graph shown on the table, we had a $40 million project from 3M. Again, that was one very large project. It took a significant effort on behalf of all departments in the city to pull off that project and bring that to fruition for the community on a timetable that was requested by the developer. And that project resulted in saving hundreds of jobs for the local community, and those are jobs that were slated to go elsewhere had that project not moved forward. Kind of backing down from 2016, again, in 2015, we had a couple of major projects. We had 2 Target projects in the industrial park, which added over $20 million. And then we also had a residential project in University Plaza that was brought on at that time frame. Oak Crest living facility was also coming in the year 2015. So you can see, again, that trend line. Moving down to 2014, we had a couple of institutional projects that came forward at that point. The library was brought online during that year, as was another church facility in the community. Also of note, though, in 2014 is the commercial line, which is the bottom graph, or the bottom bar on that graph in 2014. We did have several new restaurant and commercial projects that happened during that year. Moving down again one year in 2013, the Hampton Inn project came to the community during that time, and we also had a number of other commercial projects. The McDonald's project and Pappas development also came to us at that time. One of the things that is on your sheet, but we don't have a graphic for you today, is the construction values shown graphically on page 4 of the staff report. Shows how these projects are distributed throughout the community. We have indicated on the map from 2009 all the way to 2016 all of the projects that happened in the community, and then the size of the circle represents the size of the project, all the way from a $100,000 project to projects that are over $5 million. So it really gives you a sense to see where some of these larger projects are occurring. Obviously, 3M and all the projects in the industrial park are some of our larger projects, but we do have some relatively large projects also distributed throughout the community. And again, part of this is geared towards dispelling the perception that there is no growth happening within the community. We wanted to use the data that we have in our building permits system to show that we have achieved some of the levels that we haven't seen even as far back as 2006. And we were able to achieve those levels in 2016. I'm going to turn this over now to Jason and have him discuss the impact of this new development on the assessed value for both totals and for new EAV that's tracked by the county.
Thank you. To discuss the importance of new construction and the impact that it has on the community, we can look at the equalized assessed valuation. When you think about the importance of development and growing the tax base, it's important to understand how EAV plays into the individual tax bill. So there's 2 types of growth in EAV. So there's new EAV from new development, and then there's reassessed value, an increase in the value of existing properties. So here on this chart we have two lines. The top line is the total EAV for the community, and then that downward sloping yellow orangish line is new property EAV that was added to the tax rolls. When you get that increase of value in existing properties and that increase in EAV, the property tax bill of an individual is based off of that. So the total EAV. So when you take the equalized assessed valuation of your home, so to speak, and the total levy from all the taxing bodies, that's where your tax rate comes from. And as EAV goes up, if you don't have any new growth, the individual tax burden for a family or a home does not change. Your tax bill doesn't change, but it does have an effect on the tax rate. So as EAV goes up, the tax rate goes down, and that can actually, it's not going to have the same impact, but in the long run, it kind of does, because if you can get the rate down, you can become more competitive. One of the things with the high tax rate that we have in the community right now is we lose our strategic advantage, especially in the housing market. Over time, what has happened is the ability to buy more square footage with your dollar is lost due to the increase in the property tax. However, if we can lower the rate, new people that would be coming to look at building new homes, they don't have that same tax rate, and they don't apply that higher tax rate to a new property. So, let's see if I can get rid of that. What I do. Sorry. Thank you. So if you look at this trend line, you have in 2005 and 2006, you have that downward sloping. We had a lot of home construction going on pre-recession, so the housing market started to collapse in 2008 across the nation. And we didn't really see this in DeKalb. We didn't bottom out until 2012 and 2013. And when you think about the new construction and the trend lines that we talked about, the new construction that we've seen since 2011, there's a lag behind the assessment and the AV from when that construction is put on the books here at the city. So in the previous slide, we looked at how that low number was in 2011. From when construction is completed, let's say construction takes a year, whenever that construction is completed, depending on when the assessment of that property takes place, it isn't until the very following year. So you have a 2-year lag in between when the construction takes place and when the revenue is actually collected from that construction. So that bottom number in the previous slide for construction you see here in 2013. And then we see that steady trend upward. So that project that we had with 3M and that was completed this past year, we will see that in 2018 in EAV. Also, something that should be considered is how the assessment process works. So properties are reassessed on a quadrennial basis. So our last one was in 2015, the next one's coming up in 2019. Based on the trends of home sales and construction and sales of commercial properties, I would expect that we would see this continued upward trend in EAV for the next couple of years because they established that. So this was the first major year that we saw a bump. We saw a small bump last year. We saw a larger one this year. Hopefully this continues. And then if we can keep this momentum going with construction and new development in the community, when the reassessment happens in 2019, we would be able to expect a continued upward trend in EAV with an ultimate goal that if we can increase the tax base and raise the EAV, lower the property tax rate itself, suddenly we regain that strategic advantage of having the available cheap land with lower taxes when you compare it to the western suburbs. In the housing market, it's important to note just kind of the impact and how hard DeKalb was hit with the collapse of the housing market. So our EAV kind of peaked in 2008, and it bottomed out just in 2015. So between 2008 and 2014, we lost approximately $700 million in value in the real estate markets between residential, commercial, and industrial. That's in the existing properties. So that is real value and equity that was lost in the community, and we're starting to gain that back. So moving forward, it's not just new construction, but we really do need to also look at gaining back the value in the existing properties that are there so that people that did invest into the community pre-recession, they gain back that equity and they don't have that sour taste in their mouth from investing in the community in an unfortunate time. So at this time, we would entertain any questions about the trends or anything in regards to EAV or construction.
Questions? Alderman Jacobson.
Looking at the slide you just had up, the total EAV versus new property EAV. Obviously, 14, 15, and 16, we're looking at a total aggregate of 16, almost $17 million in new property EAV. Yet our trend line is only up about $4 million, which means new home values are still losing value. If most of those new dollars are coming from industrial, correct?
Yeah, except for this past year in 2016, when you do see that larger increase in the total EAV. So we had that downward trend through 2014, and then in 2015, I think it was about a 0.5% increase. And then we just received the numbers for the 2016 assessment, which is, I believe, up just over 7% total EAV. So I would have to look at the total EAV and the new construction to be able to parse out exactly how much of that increase is due to new construction.
Again, we're seeing that on the slide, are we not?
Yeah.
So 14, 15, and 16, we're showing at least a $5 million new construction, EAV, in the blue trend line. And the red trend line, we're only seeing about a $4 million increase in total EAV. Which means home values are still shrinking.
There's two axes there. So your primary axis there on your left is actually the total EAV.
Okay.
So it's not 4
They
million
don't
in total
correlate.
EAV.
I see what you're saying.
And I set it up that way so you could kind of see the difference in
I appreciate
trends.
that. I see it now. Thank you.
Other questions or discussion? Alderman Faber.
The point that you made in your presentation about the kind of the lag between when construction is completed and the EAV is assessed and the taxes are collected, I think that's part of the discussion we were trying to have earlier when we were discussing the impact fees. And I mean, obviously that's one of the reasons to have impact fees. If we have a lot of residential construction, a lot of people are moving in, we're not going to see the taxes coming to the school board and the school district until after, a year or two after these families have moved in, if it started using the services. And so that's why we have the impact fees. And so potentially there might be a reason, bring that back for discussion if the rest of the council desires to have a discussion about waiving impact fees until we do fall into that situation again where we see the residential starting to tick up.
Other comments or discussion? Seeing none, I'll thank Jason and Joellen for the presentation this evening. Appreciate the information coming forward. At this point, I would entertain a motion to, I'm sorry, anyone wishing to comment to council at this point? Seeing, do we have anyone registered? Okay. I'd entertain a motion to move to executive session to discuss personnel as provided for in 5 ILCS 120/2C1, collective bargaining as provided for in 5 ILCS 120/2C2, and to discuss executive session minutes as provided for in 5 ILCS 120/2C21. Is there a motion? Moved by Alderman Marquardt, seconded by Alderman Noriko. Roll call, please.
Jacobson?
Yes.
Fanouken?
Yes.
Marquardt?
Yes.
Snow?
Yes.
Noriko?
Yes.
Favor?
Yes.
Ray?
Yes,
7 yes.
thank you. We'll use the large conference room, and my intent would be to be back for our 6 o'clock regular meeting convening.
Oh.